word welcome. I love that kind of word. I love this word because it has also well, which is obviously the topic of the day, well-being. Well means pleasure and contentment, right? So I'm very happy, as Matteo was just on stage, very happy to welcome you here. I think it's a very, very, very good word. I wanted to start this today by having a little bit of an idea, a concept that probably some of the speakers today will be talking about, which is the superlinear well-being. Superlinear, what is that? I'll come to that in a second. Is well-being, can it be superlinear? Can it be more than it has been until now? That's a bit, I guess, the question we'll be exploring all together today. So let's start with that word, linear. We live in a world that is still very linear. If something happens this morning in Dubai, it only happens here. If it happens in New York, if it happens in London where I live, if it happens in Athens, in Geneva where I'm from, it only stays in one place. I'm going to give you an example. If there's an accident this morning, I don't know if there was, on Sheikh Zayed Road next door, and they realize that, oh, maybe that part of the road was not built properly, we should actually make an effort on this, the single event will be corrected on that single road at single time. This is the world we live in. We live in a world of batches. We solve problems one by one. In places, in cities, in companies, personally, one by one, and probably in well-being as well. But the thing is, we are actually entering a world that is superlinear. Superlinear means simply that it's above linear, that's it, right? An example, a very easy example to understand, is the reason why we all live in cities. A dire example, I'm sorry to be pointing this out on a conference, is obviously we hear about the virus these days. You know, the virus that is everybody's mind nowadays. The conference in Barcelona next week, Mobile World Congress, was cancelled because of it. It has a superlinearity within it, the virus. It means that when people are very close together, they get the virus maybe faster. The same happens with IDs. This is why we move to cities, because when we move to cities, and the UN is obviously forecasting that a lot of us will be living in cities, I already do, and you guys do here as well in Dubai, more and more people live in cities, more and more IDs are being created because the superlinearity actually goes into place. And this is one of the reasons. Another thing that we do with superlinearity, and this is why I was talking about the example of the car earlier, the example of the accident on the road, is Tesla. And I'm not here, I don't have shares or anything, I'm not pushing you to buy a Tesla, but Tesla actually is more than a car. Tesla is a computer. Tesla has eyes. It records the streets, it sees everything. The more Teslas you have, the more it learns about its environment. And what happens in the same exact thing that I just mentioned earlier, if there is an accident on Sheikh Zayed Road this morning, the Tesla sees it, and as soon as it learns how to not have that kind of accident, this data is put back in the entire fleet of Teslas. And now your Tesla, that you had not been in an accident this morning, knows that at this bit of the road, it shouldn't do X and Y to avoid the accident. This is superlinearity. This is how it happens. And the question is, maybe for well-being it can happen. Should it happen? I don't know. But this is the world we are already living in. And of course, you add examples like the ones that you have in your pockets. More and more data is being shared. You learn more and more things. You put data out there. We're using machine learning and AI actually to understand. Even simply your iPhone understands that you need to be living. Let's keep with the example of the road. Your iPhone will tell you, oh, you have a meeting in 1 hour. You should be leaving because there's traffic. That's already superlinearity. It uses data to understand where we're going and how fast are we going to get there. So this is something that is happening. We're becoming more and more superlinear, even if we don't see it, and more companies are going into that direction. So the question that I just asked is, what if well-being could become superlinear? To be honest, I don't know if it can. And probably, and this is why I'm also happy to be here in Dubai with you at Frontiers Next Wellbeing, is to learn this, to listen to other speakers that will be speaking after me, to understand, is it possible for well-being to become superlinear? Is it possible that if some good practice of well-being happens somewhere, let's say again New York or Dubai, I can learn about it and implement it in my own life without having to search for it whilst living in London. This is a bit the idea, this is a hope that I have, obviously, for well-being. Who am I? Because I didn't really properly introduce myself. I'm Paul, Papadimitriou, as the last name says. I'm Greek, but I was actually born in Switzerland, and my mother was from Finland. The joke is obviously that as a Greek, I dodge my taxes. As a Swiss, I hide the money in the bank. As a Finn, probably I don't know, I finance Christmas because Santa Claus lives in Finland. So there you go. The alternative story is my 3 passports are locked in a safe in Zurich, and my real name is Jason Bourne. I do actually travel around the world. I have many, many clients, including actually here in Dubai. I work with a lots of airlines. This is why Matteo was joking about my podcast, with FMCG companies, technology companies. And we help them understand what makes the consumer click, how the human experience is changing, what kind of behaviors are changing, and how they should implement then strategies to go along with that. But enough about me. Let's go back to the topic. What is well-being? To me, well-being, I don't have a definition, to be honest, but to me, well-being was formed, the realization of what it was formed with 2 very important chapters in my life that I've lived, 2 cities, actually a lot of cities that I've lived. The first one is in Tokyo. I was living, this is a Shinjuku station. That was my station actually, 4 million people a day. I come from a country that has 8 million people, so every 2 days my country was going through that station. I love Japan, I don't know if you've ever been, because it's a country that represents harmony by design. There's something very strange about it, especially Tokyo. It's super busy, the biggest city on earth. It seems that it's never stops buzzing. There's a lot of stuff happening, and yet you find peace, quiet, and harmony. I had not even set foot for like 12 hours when I was living there that I realized this is my well-being. I love this kind of city. It made something, and I put some words here on the side. It created that feeling of mindfulness, respectfulness. It was responsive, and it was understandable. I know it's, what I mean here is not Japanese was understandable, but for some reason, I felt that the rules, because it's very codified, Japan, was understandable and made me well. Maybe having this realization of what well-being meant. Although, again, I was born in Switzerland. Switzerland is one of the countries with the highest quality of life according to most of the measures, and it's a pretty happy place as well. But maybe because I was born there, I never realized what it actually meant. It was Japan that made me realize that. And after Japan, I moved to the Philippines, to Manila. Very different place, because obviously it's an emerging country, it's more messy, it's disorganized. I love the Philippines, I really loved it. My time there was also very good. And that made me the other realization, which is happiness by soul. Although the Philippines is ranked very low on a lot of the criteria that we usually use for development, the one criteria where they always rank high is happiness. For some reason, people are very happy. No matter what I just said about Japan, very well organized, codified, etc. It just works. And that made me feel also happy. Other words here, it was fulfilling, it was comforting, it was communal, it was exalting. You know, we always say about the Filipinos is the 4, the 5 F, you know, fun, family, faith, food, and friends, right? And it was this kind of sense of community that actually created this understanding of well-being. And my question here is for you, because I don't know the answer, is can we make these 2 things I just mentioned, these 2 experiences, the harmony by design and happiness by soul, can we make them merge in well-being, in superlinear well-being? So the realization is that well-being, these are the 2 examples, for me is a culture. It has to be a culture. This is the reason these 2 countries were so good to me for this understanding of what well-being meant to me. Again, it's maybe very personal, is that both had a culture of it. It was something that was created. And you know, a culture, like a culture for companies, by the way, a culture is, for me, the best definition of culture is something you do when no one is looking. So it's something that is very natural. That was very natural to these 2 places, and that's why I felt this sense of well-being myself. Well-being has to be, and that's for me the thing that I want to give you, because it's something that I always find a bit ridiculous when I read about well-being. It has to be both systematic and personal or individual. It cannot just be rules. If you just declare that you need to be well-being, it's not going to work. It's a top-down approach. It's like culture in a company. You cannot just decide that our company represents X and you have to go along with it. That doesn't work. And the other one, which is a very American way of personalization, is it cannot just be an app. I hear so many people say, I'm going to use Headspace or Calm, very good apps, by the way, and I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes a day, and that's going to be my well-being. That's not good enough either. You need to have both sides of the equations to have this sense of well-being, to have this sense of happiness, at least to me. It is very important, this realization that both are top-down and personal, systematic. The system has to be built in, and the personal has to be built in. So superlinear well-being, can it be achieved? Again, I don't have the answer. The one thing I do know, however, it has to be a participative design. The same reason I just mentioned the world culture, the same reason for those of you who work in organizations that are trying to make change happen in an organization. If you don't create it, so if you don't design it, and we'll hear about people from Frog today, as Matteo was as well, so they know much more about design than I do, but it has to be participative as well. It cannot be what I said just a minute ago, it cannot be just top-down, it cannot be just declarative. You cannot just decide that we're going to be well and that everybody else should be well. It doesn't work that way. So it has to be participative, it has to respect the autonomy of the people, it has also to probably respect their vulnerability, which is something that is very hard to achieve, to understand that each of us is different and we all have our own failures and we play along with those failures and not try to hide them or make as if they do not exist. Well-being. You know, I started by saying that welcome, in the world welcome, there was pleasure and contentment. Well, well-being is also a choice. In the world, well also means choice. So it's a choice that we have to do. It's a choice that I see that Dubai is trying to achieve. It's a choice that each of us have to decide personally. I don't know if you woke up this morning being happy or not being happy, being well or not being well. I don't know if we can learn what triggered these moments. Were you happy when you woke up this morning or not? This is a bit, I guess, the question we have to go on the journey together today. But well-being is a choice because, again, the word well means choice as well. And it's a choice that needs heroes. And I think this is why I'm so happy to be here, is because I want to listen to heroes. Heroes are no Iron Man and Superman and other Marvel, they're very cool movies, by the way. Heroes, and indulge me for my Greekness here, heroes in the Greek mythology is her first, she's a she's a person that just shows the light. And we need to have people that shows the light. And I hope that the people who are going to be on stage, and you guys as well, when we interact together later during the breaks, will be these heroes. We need to find ways to actually be all well together. On that, I'm Papadimitriou. I'll be your host today. This is my website if you're interested in any kind of sorts. And on that, thank you very much.